All right, wonderful. Max, I will turn it over to you. Max has graciously offered to lead our training today. So maybe you can start with a little introduction of yourself and then we can jump in.
Yes, hello. Hi, everybody. My name is Max Broad. I am the co-leader of Citizens Climate Lobby, our DC chapter. I'm located here in Washington, DC. And just a big thank you to all of you for speaking up for this incredible drive to just make a better fashion system and a more humane workplace setting for folks. So, thank you for being part of this. We're going to talk about lobbying today and, what lobbying is going to look like on our September 12th lobby day. I invite you to put in the chat, introduce yourself, where you are, and if you've ever lobbied before. I'd love to see, what type of experience is here. And when I talk about lobbying, I'm talking about speaking with an elected official, going to have a sit-down meeting or a Zoom meeting to talk to them or their staff about adopting legislation or making a change on behalf of something that you're advocating for. So yeah, go ahead and throw that in the chat. And I see already a first-time lobbyer. Curious to hear. All right, so I got some fellow DMV people in the DC area, Philly, done some once or twice. Great. Ollie's in DC, hey. First time. Okay. Natasha in San Francisco, second time. I'm from the Bay Area, so hello, Bay Area person. Colleen with CCL, yes. Kendall, University of Delaware, first time. Annabelle, first time. Sam has some experience. All right, great. So what we're going to do today is talk about, keep putting in the chat. Yeah, I want to see all of it. I want to see all of y'all. So, thanks for being here. We're going to spend some time diving into what lobbying looks like. And the idea is we're going to make this as easy as possible by clearly defining what the roles are of the lobby meeting and what the outline of the meeting is going to look like. So let me start by pulling up our slides for the day. Okay, is that in slideshow format? All right, thumbs up, good. All right, so, let's just demystify lobbying, right? And so really what we're doing is we're diving into effective strategies and tactics for how to lobby. We're going to be conveying that over the course of this presentation, how you can confidently engage with politicians and their staff to really craft an attainable and actionable ask, right? We want to be persuasive. And also just what we'll do is set up and prepare for a lobby meeting. So, what does lobbying mean? And here's where we want to, flip the script. You can take a look at this political cartoon that looks at, Congress and all the influence from big corporations and Wall Street and arms and oil and agribusiness and foreign lobbyists, right? And they're all lined up and they're all these middle-aged elderly men who are in suits. And then of course you have the US taxpayers who are in their barrels. And, with the sign, no shoes, no service, as if, people are being excluded from lobbying. And really what this is about is flipping that script. When most of us think of a lobbyist, you may think of somebody who looks like these rich men in nice suits. But really, the idea here is to show that you and I are lobbyists. Common people can be lobbyists. And indeed, it's so impactful when individual people speak up in the political process, speak up in the democratic system, because we can make change. I've seen it happen with my very eyes. Okay, we can make change. And there's nothing more empowering than when we do. So, here's where we're trying to make sure that the room is not just filled with these people in their fancy suits, but make sure it's filled with people like us speaking up for, important bills like the Fabric Act. So what is lobbying? And, you know, when we think of lobbying, it may feel like an intimidating term to some of you, but really we lobby in everyday life, right? When we were children, we lobbied our parents. You know, maybe we lobbied them for sweets or to stay up later. As adults, we lobby our friends and our partners and in our workplace. And really what it is we're trying to seek, we're seeking to influence, you know, an entity, in this case, a politician or public official on an issue. But, you know, in many cases, we're lobbying, we're trying to influence something in our life. So we can really draw lobbying from other instances. And we're just going to add a little more formality to make and structure to this lobbying. Lobbying is basic democracy in action. Yeah, democracy functions on lobbying, right? Politicians need to hear from their constituents. Politicians need to hear from their communities to know what people are thinking and what they value. And really, if we're not speaking up, then the only people who are the ones with money and power. So that's why it's so important that we are. And indeed, money is so important in our political system. It's deeply unfortunate, you know, especially since Citizens United, the Citizens United case was settled over a decade ago, that really allowed more corporate influence in our political system. But fact of the matter is that money is used to buy votes, right? Money is used to run campaigns and increase the potency of a candidate. But at the end of the day, the candidate needs votes. That's the #1 currency they have as a politician. And so us engaging is really important, whether or not we have money on our side. Us engaging is a key way for them to connect with the community and attain those votes that are so important for keeping them in office and keeping that feedback loop going in politics. So that's why we're speaking up today. So how to have an effective conversation. Just some like general principles for how we're going to be structuring this, starting with respect, right? We're grounding this in respect. And this isn't easy for everybody, right? Because we're living in an increasing polarized world. And sometimes you may be meeting with somebody who is a member of a different party than you. And how are you going to respect them, right? Can you have space for holding hope in your heart that they can align with you on this bill? And so centering respect is going to be a critical tool for you to build a connection and pave a path forward to collaborate on a really important issue. Thanks or gratitude is something we use as a conduit to respect, right? A conduit to opening that door to collaboration and having constructive dialogue. Finding common ground. You may not agree with them on everything. Even if they're a member of the same party as you, you may not agree with them on everything. But what you may find in our lives that what divides us is often more visible than what unites us. And so this is where you need to be attentive for what unites us. Staying grounded in facts, okay, using science to back up what we're trying to do in facts and evidence. And then of course, personal stories really make this, you know, bring the facts and evidence to life. And really you're looking to build a relationship with these members. So there's a statistic that says, I heard once that says 40% of trust is just facial recognition. And I have no idea how that's measured. I don't know if that's even real. I'm not really speaking well to my thing grounded in facts and evidence factoid here. But the point being that, you know, the term cold calling is called that because people are much less likely to return your phone call or email if they don't know who you are. And sure enough, you're trying to put that face behind the mission in this effort. Okay, so that's how you're going to be working to build a relationship, and we'll talk more about that. So, all right, so preparing for a visit. Yeah, and you're going to have a copy of these slides. but generally, you want to do your research, right? So for the people who you're meeting with, know their position on the issue, any related bills they may have worked on or sponsored that could be connected to this issue, their voting history, their biographic information, right? Are they a member of a faith community? Are they from the district that they live in now, or are they from somewhere else? Is there anything that you can use to build a connection with them? What are their passions, right? What are the key issues that they focus on? Are they really into environment? Are they really into labor? Are they really into healthcare? Dig into what are their passions. Okay. Prepare for a visit by preparing a gratitude. And we'll talk more about, what that looks like and how to do that. Be clear on what you want. Okay. This is our group's gonna have a pretty clear ask, right? We're gonna be wanting to get people to sign on to the Fabric Act. But you also may want to have a secondary ask. We're going to talk about why that's important, right? Because you may not always get your first ask. And then also share the why, right? You're going to want to share, you want to be ready to share, what the impact and relevance is of the policy, especially in their district, right? Why should they care about it? Maybe you have a compelling story. So, be ready to speak powerfully for, people who are going to be relying on the impact of a bill like the Fabric Act. People are often curious about what to wear at meetings like this. Here's an example, obviously just for success, more business formal type of attire is good. I have this picture of people who attended a lobby meeting, so you can get a sense of what's kind of standard attire on the Hill. It'll be mid-September at that point, and so hopefully it won't be too hot. Keep in mind the temperature when you're dressing up. But yeah, more trend towards more business formal. It's never going to hurt to be more formal. And I do a lot of advocacy, as I mentioned. I've been in climate advocacy for over a decade with Citizens Climate Lobby, and my view is when you're trying to change the system, you can only change one variable at a time. What I mean by that is if you're trying to change the system to make a better workplace standard for folks in the labor setting, then if you come in with wearing clothes that don't reflect a professional agenda, then it could compromise your message if the member is feeling like, oh, they don't relate to you, or, oh, this person isn't taking the issue seriously. And yes, you may feel like it may not be more as authentic to your personality, but there are still ways to be, authentic in your presentation while still being professional, and I encourage that. So let's just give you a little bit of overview of what the congressional staff is, so you know what you're going to be looking for as you go into the office. And the great thing about lobbying is that things may have changed since the pandemic, but pretty much most of their office doors are open, right? Anybody can go onto Capitol Hill, go into Congress, and stop in the meeting of their members of Congress, or stop in the office. Now, they may only be able to speak with a secretary or a staff assistant, but they have open door policies. So the chief of staff is the person who runs the shop for the member. The legislative director is the person who is the chief of the legislative agenda, what bills they are introducing and sponsoring, and analyzing the trade-offs for those bills. The legislative assistants will help the legislative director, and the legislative assistants are oftentimes the person that you'll meet with because they are more specialized, right? They're able to be a little bit more granular in the topics that they take on. Now, if you're talking about the House of Representatives, each House member, I feel like they have somewhere in the realm of, I think it's like 5 to 8 staff, whereas the Senate will have more like 12 to 20 staff. So the Senate offices are definitely bigger and more equipped to take on more versatile issues. The legislative correspondent will be the person who responds to legislative inquiries. The staff assistant is a support role, and then the scheduler is the person that many of you may be interacting with as you're setting up meetings. And then, of course, there's people who are dealing with constituent services, responding to constituents and responding to the interests of people in the district. So let's talk about meeting roles. Okay, we're going to go over 5 key roles today, including the leader, the appreciator, the timekeeper, the asker, and the note taker. And the idea is that you are going to have a specific role going into the meeting, so you know exactly what you're going to be responsible for. You're not going to have to take on anything that any curveballs or anything that is unexpected, because you're going to know exactly what you're going into the meeting to do. This is just going to be a well-run orchestra. And as I go through the roles, I want you to listen for what role appeals to you most, because we're going to do a lobby practice. And as we do the practice lobby run, you'll take on one of these roles. And, some roles are better for people who are more gregarious. Some roles are better for people who are a little bit more nervous and don't want to be talking a lot in their first meeting. And so, these are suggested roles, and, there's going to be some flexibility. And indeed, some people may need to assume multiple roles. So, be ready for that before the meeting as you set it up. And ideally, everybody who wants to is able to participate in the discussion. Okay, so while these roles delineate, the different roles in the meeting, or these titles that delineate different roles in the meeting, everybody should have a role in the discussion. All right, so let's jump into this. All right, so the leader is the person either with a relationship with the office or who's been in touch with the office most. They should ideally be a constituent. And I like to see the leader as the conductor of the orchestra. They may not be the one making the music, but they're the one guiding everybody and keeping everything moving along, keep the meeting on track. They will facilitate the agenda, and especially the transitions. So like maybe we just finished up with introductions and I'll be like, okay, now Emily over here is going to do the ask, right? Or, all right, we'll point to John over here who's going to share about why we are so appreciative of your work on Capitol Hill. So that's how the leader will facilitate transitions. And ideally, the leader empowers everyone to participate in a balanced way, right? The leader is making sure that nobody's dominating the conversation, and the leader is making sure that the group is listening as much as they're talking. We're going to talk more about listening. All right, so that's the leader. The appreciator, also somebody who ideally would be a constituent, is going to deliver gratitude. And the gratitude sets a positive tone for the meeting, and it should reflect on a recent accomplishment that is a genuine accomplishment, right? So that could be a recently sponsored bill. That could be a statement, a public statement, or even an announcement on social media. Dear Congressperson, we saw that you recently gave a shout out to improving. You said that people being paid a livable wage is really important. We saw that on Twitter, and we really appreciated your, bringing that up. Use that gratitude as a way to kind of open the door and let them be proud of their accomplishments and their commitment as a way to continue that momentum and pride into your meeting. The timekeeper is not a person who speaks a lot, but plays a very important role. And so what the timekeeper does up front is just confirm the duration of the meeting time. Okay, this is because meetings will oftentimes move at different paces, and things may come up, right? Like if you're meeting with a member, they may have a floor vote scheduled that's going to cut your meeting down from 30 minutes to 10 minutes. Okay, this is your chance to not only confirm their time, but show that you value their time. You're being respectful. And so the timekeeper will ask up front, we just want to confirm how much time you have for this meeting. I've seen people ask, and this is the wrong way to do timekeeping. They'll say like, we know you have 30 minutes scheduled for that meeting. Do you still have that? And that's a good way to, trigger your member who may feel like, oh, this meeting is going to take, going to be a bad use of my time. So, just letting them know that you're interested, you want to be respectful of their time, and just ask, how much time that they expect to have for this meeting. And then the timekeeper will also give signals for when the meeting is wrapping up. It's great for the timekeeper to jump in and say, hey, 5-minute warning. And the timekeeper will just kind of help keep the flow of the meeting so that we don't have to rush. And in terms of meeting flow, the idea is you want to leave them wanting more, right? It's easy for us to get in there and be all pumped up and excited and want to share all this information. And this is where we want to take a breath and leave them wanting more. If they have questions, if the members or staff have questions, they'll ask, right? They'll dive in. So if you can tee up some topics and let them kind of navigate for how they want to dive into more is a great thing. Note taker is a great role for somebody who is good at being detailed. And if you're somebody who doesn't want to do a large amount of talking, note taker isn't a role that requires any talking, although it can involve talking if you want to be part of the discussion. And you want to pay attention to, not just what's said, but also tone and body language of the staff and members so that you can know how they're receiving the information. Their duties will include the note taker will include capturing details supporting the ask. What is their, when we give the ask, when we make a request of the office, what is their reaction? Taking down concerns, questions, and suggestions that the member may have. Note any follow-up items, be sure to capture that. And then, recap and debrief with others after the meeting. Okay, and these notes will be useful for the continued advocacy. So after you finish the meeting, get together with people, get together with your team, and just debrief on the notes so that you know what to, making sure that you've captured everything correctly. The asker plays a very important role of being ready to make the ask, right? So this is somebody who should have a strong grasp of the policy and be ready to speak about the policy, and then ask the member, our primary ask being, to sign on to the Fabric Act. So they are going to be introducing the topic of the policy and legislation, and then, presenting the group's purpose, why we're here to talk about the bill, and then they'll deliver the ask, So, given that everything we've talked about, member XYZ, do you think that this is a piece of legislation that you will support? Being clear and concise with your ask is good. And then ideally you'll have some sort of fact sheet or materials, and maybe you want to leave those behind. And that is also, that can be a role of the deliverer. If we have, bigger teams, the deliverer is the person who's responsible for leaving behind any materials or fact sheets. So I'll go through the meeting outline as well, so we can kind of piece together all of these roles and where they come in. And then what you can do is, I'll take some questions after. And what you can do is you can either put any questions in the chat or save them for after this portion. So here's the general roadmap of a live meeting, right? So you'll start with introductions. All right, so you'll enter the office, and the staff will take you to a room where you all can meet. Sometimes something came up, there's no rooms available, and you'll just meet in the hallway. Woof. Okay, gotta roll with the punches, right? Be flexible. So you'll go to a room, you'll sit down with them, and then you can start with introductions, right? Make sure that the member and staff get to know you and that you get to know them. Then you'll do gratitudes, right? Offer a thanks to the member for their past work. You'll deliver the ask. You can back it up with any stories or facts. This is why we see the bill as important. Go into follow-up questions that the member may have. Thank them for their time and repeat the ask. You can say, we're so grateful for the meeting today and for your time. Thank you for being part of Remake's Lobby Day. And just as a reminder, we'd love it if you could follow up to sign on to the Fabric Act as soon as possible. And then after the meeting, you'll follow up with a written note, either probably an email to your staff contacts to say thank you and reiterating the ask. So here's how to deliver an ask. Okay, the ask is direct, clear, and specific. Right? We don't want an ask that's like, will you support a better workplace conditions? We want an ask that is actionable, right? So in this case, the ask is going to be something along the lines of, will you co-sponsor the Fabric Act? A clear yes or no. Easy to know whether or not the member which side they'll take a stance on. And what you really want to avoid is like, you leave and they're kind of left wondering what you were there to talk about. And it happens, right? And so they're like, well, we just talked for 30 minutes and I don't know why they wanted a meeting. It seemed like they just wanted to vent to me. So that happens. You want to avoid that. So you want to try and get the ask in early. Make sure that doesn't get lost in the meeting. And maybe there's some leave behind materials. That's a standard thing we'll do at CCL. Leave behind materials being like a printed out fact sheet. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Emily to talk about the Fabric Act.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Max, for walking us through all those rules and what we can expect day of. Folks, we are going to have some time to do breakout role play, so you will get to practice these roles too. Also, we're going to be putting together that one-page leave behind for you and some of those fast facts on the person you might be meeting with. But wanted to share with you just some basic talking points about the Fabric Act so you can think about how to present the bill and what really resonates with you about this work. What made you passionate about the Fabric Act in order to want to come to DC and speak with elected officials about it. So a little bit of basic information about the Federal Fabric Act. We believe that this bill will create good jobs in the fashion industry with dignity. This is a talking point that we use a lot to describe the Fabric Act, the way that it will create good jobs here in the US. Sorry, Max, if you can go to the next slide for me. Thank you. These are also some great talking points. We all wear clothes. This isn't a fashion specific piece of policy. This is something that affects all of us. And we believe that where and how the clothing that we wear is made matters, and that the people who make the clothing are treated fairly. The Fabric Act introduces groundbreaking new workplace protections. So these are the protections that are going to keep workers safe and make sure that they are paid fairly. And it also creates manufacturing incentives to cement the US as a leader in responsible apparel production. So the bill also prioritizes made in the USA production and incentivizes new jobs in responsible apparel production to be created here in the US. So those are the two halves of the bill: workplace protections, keeping workers safe, and creating good jobs with dignity here in the US. Some other fast facts to keep with you. Thousands of American garment workers earn less than $3 an hour. I think that many people are often surprised to hear that sweatshops still exist in America. So that's another thing you can just keep in your mind. Sweatshops, still exist here in America. Thousands of American workers earn less than $3 an hour. But with your help, with passing the Fabric Act, we can support, again, creating dignified jobs for the nearly 100,000 American garment workers. And we can revitalize the $9 billion apparel industry here in the US. So again, other questions that will sometimes come up is, how much do we really even make clothing here in the US anymore? So these are nice pieces of information to have in your head. Nearly 100,000 American garment workers, and we want to rebuild the strength of the Made in the USA clothing industry. So, if you would like more information that's specific to your state, we will be providing you that research and sharing all of that information with the state delegations, kind of like what production looks like in your specific state and the state of the workforce is there. So happy to provide that information.
Great. That was awesome, Emily. Thank you for that. Really, wow, what a concise overview. And not only that, just very strong messaging that, oftentimes we tend to root the conversations in our own values, but if you can root it in the values of the member of Congress who may be interested in economic development, who may be interested in American industry, who may be interested in expanding jobs. These are, great ways to root the values of the bill into different parlances of the member. So that's really great. So, I'll just do 2 more slides about, the lobby meetings, and then turn over questions. Then we'll go into breakout so we can practice. Common pitfalls in a meeting: interrupting a representative or aide, right? Don't interrupt. You want to be really the more they're talking, the better. And so you really want to enable them. And they're going to be very conscientious of time, right? They have several meetings a day, every day. So they know how to run meetings. You don't want to raise an unrelated topic or just get off topic or on a tangent. Obviously talking too much, the more concise. Yes, you want to tell stories, and yes, you want to add color to the ask and what you're trying to accomplish. But it's a balancing act. You obviously don't want to talk too much, and you'll know it when their eyes are glazing over, right? You don't want to get to that point. You don't want to have a nebulous ask, as we talked about, right? Or in other words, you want a specific ask, and then letting emotions spill through. This is something where a lot of people are counting on you to be a diplomat for this issue, right? And a diplomat for the benefits that the Fabric Act is going to bring. And so that requires you being responsible for your emotions in a way that helps facilitate the success of the bill. And I imagine most of you won't have a problem with that, right? It's going to be a special thing to be on the Hill and speaking with legislators. And really, it's very fun and very exciting. So it's something most of you won't have to worry about, but just something to keep in the back of your mind. And the last thing I really want to stress is listening. Now, I always thought that lobbying was for those who are silver-tongued and had the real gift of gab. But what I've learned in my lobbying with Citizens Climate Lobby is that so much of lobbying is based on listening. And how can that be, right? Because listening is a passive thing, not an active thing. But indeed, I find listening to be extremely powerful, and there's a couple reasons why. One, you gain valuable intel, right? What do they care about? What are they talking about? What are their questions about? That's useful intel. And then if you dig deeper, you can interpret the values behind what they're talking about. What are the values of the questions? They're asking about, well, how many people will this impact? how many, they may have questions of like, will this run any jobs out of the United States? Will this threaten our economy in any way, right? You can see that there are values underlying those questions. They may ask about, well, how are the workers doing currently, right? And so you can see, oh, maybe they have a more worker frame mindset. Maybe they have a more economic frame mindset, listening for those values. And honestly, the more they talk, oftentimes the smarter they think you are, right? So that's kind of this funny paradox of listening. And if you can have some open-ended questions ready for them, it's a good way to get them talking, and you can elicit some information. You're trying to collect data, right? If they're not ready to sign on to the bill right away, that's where collecting data is really useful. What are some of the roadblocks? What are some of the barriers? What are some of the challenges? And asking questions that feedback into what they just said can help them elaborate on.
It's about him, and
can help them elaborate on what they were talking about, and give you more insight into where they're coming from and why you should care about it in order to help them be a champion of the Fabric Act. So that's listening. And I'm just gonna give a pitch that listening is not just for lobby meetings. And my time with CCL made me such a better, really improved my relationships across the board. My family relationships, my friendships, people I disagreed with, just by listening. So often I had been ready to jump into the way my family did it growing up. It was if you disagreed with somebody, you shouted at them until you got your point across. And it was effective in getting emotions off my chest, but it wasn't ever very effective in conveying my message. So, listening is a powerful tool to convey your message, and find ways that your message fits into the framework of other people's values. So, you can use that as a way to structure your not only lobby meeting, but all of your relationships. So we're going to jump into lobbying practice in a moment here. But first, I just want to open it up for any questions that folks might have. Feel free to put in the chat or come off mute.
Hi there. Some folks have been asking me in the chat about some FAQs or anticipated talking points. We will be sure to provide all of that to you before Lobby Day. So don't worry about that. And I also wanted to assure all volunteers that all of the delegations will have members of staff from Remake or the Garment Worker Center there with them. So we don't expect you to have to answer any gotcha questions.
I have a quick question. Do you think that senators will be aware of the Fabric Act since it's being reintroduced? Or could this be brand new legislation they've never heard of before? Do you have any idea about that?
Emily, you want to take that?
Sure thing. Yeah, so we are hoping that leading into our Advocacy Day in DC, with Fashion Week being just the week prior, there will be some buzzy press around the Fabric Act's reintroduction. We've had some conversations with some of the senators that you'll be visiting, and some of them are quite aware of the bill. Some of them, it might be newer information. So I think it will vary depending on the congressperson. But if we have any insight into if they've had conversations about the bill with staffers in the past, we'll try to provide that to you all.
And I'll just add to that to be ready for either outcome. It's not a binary, it's a spectrum, right? They may have heard of it, but they may not know what it entails. They may know what it entails, but don't have all the details in it. So just be ready for either outcome.
Max, Kendall asked a question about how to politely address the members of staff that we might be meeting with.
How do we address each member of the staff that we might meet with? They will tell you their names. Oftentimes it's okay to be on a first name basis with them. they're not so formal as to require like a Mrs. X and a Mr. X, Miss, Y, and so like that type of thing. But just, follow the lead based on how they introduce themselves. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to set up a lobby, the lobby training, and in a moment, Emily here is going to set up breakout rooms, but I'm realizing that I need to add something on Google Drive because it's not letting me upload the document from my computer. So give me 1 second.
While Max is doing that, just wanted to answer the question again. Yes, we will have an FAQ sheet in your packet for all the delegations. And also just wanting to reassure everyone that all the delegations will have staff members from Remake or the Garment Worker Center. So don't be nervous about having to answer any like gotcha policy type questions. We're there to support. So we'll make sure that you feel prepared. And then Remake team members, just so you all know, as I'm sending the team out into breakout rooms, if you are a member of the Remake staff, you are going to have the fun job of role playing the congressperson. So hope you came to training with your acting hats on today. Alexa, Allison, Daisy, Katrina, and Becca, and Tessa. Appreciate you guys doing that. Yeah, question coming in from the chat about the names of the senators. Yes, we've made lots of appointments. Appointments are coming in really strong. We're really feeling good about how the day is lining up. So after we complete training, the first training is today, and then the next training is next week. I will send all the volunteers the day of agenda and introduce you to the other members of your delegation, so you have an understanding of what the flow of the day will look like. You'll largely be meeting with senators in your home state as well. Yes, it would be wonderful if teams are able to meet on Zoom in advance of Lobby Day. So we will be sending those emails, kind of grouping you with your delegation and encouraging you to get together. If you'd like to practice together on Zoom once more, that would be wonderful. Yeah, exactly. Deciding on the roles. So once everyone goes through training, everyone will have an idea of what the roles are. And then you'll just want to discuss as a group who best fits each role.
All right. Emily, I'm going to email you the document.
Sure.
Just I'm having difficulty uploading it. And so if you have a chance to upload it, that'd be great, just so people can have that on hand in their meeting. But I'll show it to you right now. Actually, before I do that, all right, so folks are going to be going into breakout rooms of 5, and the idea is that the 5 people to a team, and then a lobby meeting lead, something roughly like that. And this is just going to be like a practice run. Okay, so you're going to be meeting with a pretend Elise Stefanik, who's a Republican representative from New York, and you're going to be making a pitch to get Stefanik to sign on to a a bill of onto the Fabric Act. So you're going to have 5 minutes to determine roles. So I want everybody to try and determine roles as quickly as possible. And then, so coordinate with your group to share, who wants to take on what role. Just try and jump into that right off the bat as soon as you're in a breakout meeting. I want you all to share what roles you like. Maybe you can get that done right away. And then once you have the roles, you can work through the lobby meeting outline together. And I'll pull that up in a moment, and do a practice lobby meeting. And you can really just read from the script. That's totally okay. But you're not going to, you're not going to need to be too sophisticated with this. This is just a dry run to get you experience of like what the flow of the meeting looks like. Right? So first 5 minutes, determine your roles. The next 10 minutes to the practice lobby meeting, right? And the volunteer in your room from Remake is going, or the role player in the room from Remake is going to be pretending to be Representative Stefanik, and they are just going to answer your questions, maybe with some curveballs, maybe straightforward, and but they're not going to throw anything at you that will be difficult for you to answer now. You'll have more, background and information later on when it comes time to the lobby meeting, but this is just a chance for you to get your feet wet, get some experience lobbying, or doing a dry run. So what that's going to look like, here are the lobby team roles. So I want you all to decide as soon as you join the meeting who's going to be the leader. And again, this is the person who orchestrates the meeting, empowers everyone to participate, especially the constituents. They will facilitate transitions in the agenda, cover the main asks in the meeting, and follow up with the office afterwards. Now, if there's somebody else who could be the asker, then the leader will not do that. Okay, I just want to stress that. So this is just in case you don't have enough people for your roles. Appreciator is a lobby team member who shows appreciation for something the member of Congress has recently accomplished. If possible, this should be a constituent. A time monitor, the person who asks up front how much time there is for the meeting and keeps the meeting on time. They monitor the time that volunteers and the member of staff are talking with, and the goal is to be talking 50-50, or even having you talk less than them. The note taker takes notes, follows the thread of the conversation, captures what's said and what their reactions are, what the takeaways are, things like that. And then the asker is going to deliver the ask, the request of what the member does, offers any materials. And if possible, this should be a constituent who has a strong grasp of the policy and its wider implications and ripple effects. So those are the roles. And then the meeting outline essentially be the leader opens the meeting with introductions. People will state that if they're constituents. Timekeeper is going to ask about the member's time. Appreciation, the appreciator, here's the sample appreciation, right? So the appreciator can deliver this appreciation for the member to react to. Then the asker will go into the Fabric Act, share a little bit about it, and ask if the member will co-sponsor, as well as deliver the fact sheet. You can be prepared to ask about challenges. If the member isn't ready to sign on, feel free to dig in with curiosity. Use curiosity and without judgment. And so you can, the asker can dig in with questions like, are there any voices in your community who you feel like you may want to hear from in order to validate signing on to this bill? Or what are your main objections to this bill? Or is there anything you want to elaborate on about what you do and don't like about this bill? And the asker maybe want to follow up with a secondary ask if they're not ready to sign on. So if the member says, well, yeah, I'd love to hear from my some of my community members who have supported me from the labor movement. And you can say, well, you know, would you rather connect with them yourself, or would you rather us reach out to them? And they can say, well, how about I make an introduction with you? So then your secondary ask would be, okay, great. Can we just can we just plan to, you know, you make that introduction to some of those community members for us to reach out to. So having that secondary ask is a way to just keep the ball moving forward. You don't want the conversation to just end at no. And then, and the secondary ask could just be like, will you take some time to review the bill? Right? Will you take some time to look into this further? Or assign it to a staffer to evaluate whether this is a bill that you will sign on to. And then the leader will close by asking if there's anything else that needs to be covered, close out the meeting with gratitude, and then you may want to take a group photo, right? So you can all get together for a photo. So that's the draft flow of the meeting. These are the roles. I'm just going to check the chat. Thank you, Emily, for putting the chat with the roles and outline and or the link in the chat. And okay, great. All right. Any questions before we jump into breakouts? Okay, I see we're actually almost at 1 o'clock, or almost, we're 7 minutes left. So again, really quickly, go through the roles, set your roles in the breakout, and then we'll give you 2 minutes for that, 5 minutes for the practice meeting, and then we'll draw you all back here to close out with 1 more minute. All right, let's do it.
Okay, bye everyone.
Emily, do you need me to be a practice?
I was just going to ask, I don't need you to, so it's up to you. Let me push you to one of the rooms that has a smaller number of people.
Okay. All right. And then could you just give like a
2-minute warning?
2-minute warning? Yeah, after people have joined, and then 1 minute. Close it with us to come back at like 12:59 or something.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you all for that first practice round. You will get more time to practice with your delegations after training, but we appreciate you giving it a go.
All right, y'all. I hope that was a good teaser. I encourage you to meet with your teams as you prepare for the lobby meetings so that you can do an actual dry run and, you know, take a look at these materials, study them more in practice. I just want to leave you with one thing. And this is a quote from a person named Alex Steffen. And it has important implications for what it means to stand up as a citizen lobbyist. Okay. This quote is called, "Optimism is a political act." Entrenched interests use despair, confusion, and apathy to prevent change. They encourage modes of thinking which lead us to believe that problems are insolvable, that nothing we do can matter, that the issue is too complex to present even the opportunity for change. It is a long-standing political art to sow the seeds of mistrust between those you would rule over. As Machiavelli said, tyrants do not care if they are hated, so long as those under them do not love one another. Cynicism is often seen as a rebellious attitude in Western popular culture, but in reality, cynicism in average people is the attitude exactly most likely to conform to the desires of the powerful. Cynicism is obedience. Optimism, by contrast, especially optimism which is neither foolish nor silent, can be revolutionary. Where no one believes in a better future, despair is a logical choice, and people in despair almost never change anything. Where no one believes a better solution is possible, those benefiting from the continuation of a problem are safe. Where no one believes in the possibility of action, apathy becomes an insurmountable obstacle to reform. But introduce intelligent reasons for believing that action is possible, that better solutions are available, and that a better future can be built. And you unleash the power of people to act out of their highest principles. Shared belief in a better future is the strongest glue there is. It creates the opportunity for us to love one another, and love is an explosive force in politics. Great movements for social change always begin with statements of great optimism. Thank you all for being optimists, being on this call, and I look forward to seeing you on September 12th.
Bye, everyone. We'll talk soon. Thank you,
Thank
Matt.
you.
Thank you so much.
See you all in
Thank
DC.
you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye. Thank you.
Let's go, team. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Luck.